From the Detroit Free Press, it's Tuesday, November 3rd, Election Day. Here are today's top stories. Presented by Bush's Fresh Food Market. Calling all foodies, Bush's is hiring. Are you passionate about food, looking for growth, development, and excellent wages? Come grow with Bush's and apply online at bushes.com/join our team. That's Bush's, BUSCHS.com/join our team.
For the Detroit Free Press, I'm Kerry Jr. II, and happy Election Day. Polls open soon at 7 and close at 8 tonight, so if you're in line before 8 p.m., you can still vote. If you received an absentee ballot but haven't mailed it in, Free Press reporter Dave Boucher has information on how you can vote today. Dave, thanks so much.
Thank you.
If you have an absentee ballot, but you have not mailed it in, you haven't put it in the drop box, and it's Tuesday, how else can you vote with that ballot, or can you vote at all?
You can vote. If you want to return that absentee ballot, you have to take it to your clerk's office. Don't go to your polling place, the precinct. Take it into the clerk's office or the drop box. As long as the ballot is in the possession of the clerk or in that drop box by 8 p.m., you're good to go. Now, if you have an absentee ballot and you haven't filled it out yet, you can actually still take that to the polling place and surrender it at your polling place and then vote in person. But if it's completed, take it to a drop box or your clerk.
A massive number of ballots, absentee ballots, are being cast this year. How exactly will all of these ballots get counted? Can you clear that up for us?
Sure. So it's really, really, really important to note that absentee ballots are not new, right? So the number of people voting absentee this year is up substantially, but the process is not new. Michiganders and people all over the country have relied on absentee ballots for decades. So the reason that the process takes longer is that the counting and the security measures in place just require a little bit more attention than, voting in person on Election Day. So there are security measures in place, from making sure that the person who received a ballot is actually the person who cast the ballot, to ensuring that the ballots are in secrecy envelopes, to just going through and making sure that everything lines up within the Secretary of State and the local clerk's process that just kind of take longer to count absentee ballots. As you've noted, we have many more ballots this year. More than 3 million absentee ballots are expected to be cast. That's compared to roughly 2 million people who are expected to vote in person. So it's just a process that takes a little bit of time. Again, it's not any different than years in the past, the process. Just the only thing that's different is the amount of absentee ballots we're seeing.
And so when can we expect to get the results of the election?
The Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson, is saying that it could take until Friday for us to know the actual final results, but we could know some results from some precincts sooner. So we're going to be monitoring that. We don't anticipate having a ton of information on election night. Polls close at 8 p.m. Clerks aren't allowed to release any information on the results of any absentee ballots until after polls close. So we don't anticipate having a ton of great information until Wednesday. But we'll see. A lot of this, is, as you noted, is unknown, and we're going to do the best we can to track it and release that information as soon as we have it.
Free Press reporter Dave Boucher, thanks again for all the information and insight.
Of course. Thanks for listening and reading.
Fake images of long lines, allegations of foreign interference, and false narratives of voter fraud are all misinformation and disinformation tactics. Voters need to know how to identify what's real and what's fake. Ashley Nurbavig is the Free Press's reporter on misinformation and disinformation. She talks with reporter and producer Tad Davis about what to look out for.
Where are you mostly seeing this misinformation and disinformation? Is it online, through social media posts? Is it news?
So social media is definitely where you see a lot of misinformation. So people who are just sharing information that they think is true and maybe have seen a source and maybe are citing a source that's real, like a real story from a real legitimate news outlet, and either maybe mistaking something or only reading the headline and then making, so you see a lot of that. You also see disinformation shared. There's a couple different news sites that are popular, and they'll usually take something that maybe is real and really mangle it. And you can tell that they are putting it in the right phrasing, in the right light to raise a lot of passions and to kind of distort how people take in the information.
What do you think the motivation is for the people spreading misinformation and disinformation?
I think that is one of the hardest things. It's a hard thing to nail down, right? It could be anyone doing it for any reason. And what I think is really important is that's why we talk about mis and dis, because misinformation is so common on the internet, and it can range from like me sharing a meme that like I have no intention of fooling anyone. I know it's not correct, but I'm making a joke and I think that that's obvious. And then someone reads it and they think that like really truly the Detroit Tigers are a group of tigers, who play a sport. Like there is always the possibility of something being misconstrued on the internet. And so that range, I think, is part of why this new type of information is so tricky, because you're kind of constantly playing with trying to find an intent, find where like truth meets opinion.
What kind of misinformation and disinformation have you seen this year regarding the election cycle?
Okay, so, the common themes are disparaging the candidates and making them seem much less like they are people that you want to vote for, which is like semi more common, and things that we see, and manipulating videos to make them look like the person is either, dumber or less articulate or more aggressive. There are lots of ways to change something to make it look worse than it is. But the other one that's really been common is this idea that there is going to be groups at the polls or something at the polls that are going to threaten you. And it's really coming from both sides. When it's on the right side, it is like, we need to be there to challenge people and make sure that there are people who are supposed to be voting there. And we're going to be there to make sure the vote is correct. And then on the left side, it's sort of you need to be prepared because there are going to be people at the polls who are going to threaten your safety. And it might be kind of different in each part of the country. And I think that's part of what's so tough about this stuff, is that you ask, what are we seeing this election season? What have we seen this election season? And today and tomorrow and this week is kind of when we expect to see what will define this election season disinformation topics.
Thank you so much for your time, Ashley.
Yeah, of course. No, this has been really, really fun.
This has been your morning Election Day briefing. Come back to this feed for coverage throughout the day. And for more news, you can always head to www.freep.com.
For more stories from the Detroit Free Press, be sure to check out freep.com. That's FREEP.com. If you're a fan and want to support our quality local journalism, subscribe. Go to freep.com/special offer.